What drives a person to commit the unthinkable? Tonight we unravel the chilling story of Albert Fish, known as the Brooklyn Vampire. He wasn't just a child molester and cannibal. His horrific acts were fueled by religious delusions and haunting voices in his head. Stay with us as we dive deep into the twisted mind of one of history's most disturbing criminals. Albert Fish is a name that still sends shivers down the spine. Dubbed the Brooklyn Vampire, his crimes were not only gruesome but also profoundly unsettling. Unspeakable acts of violence, cannibalism, and sadomasochism marked Fish's reign of terror in the early 20th century. His victims were innocent children, and his methods were beyond comprehension. But what made Albert Fish truly terrifying was his claim that religious visions and auditory hallucinations drove him. He believed a higher power commanded him to do these heinous acts. Today we'll explore how these delusions shaped his actions and led to a series of crimes that left a permanent scar on history. In this video, we'll delve into the disturbing life of Albert Fish, examining his upbringing, his descent into madness, and the psychological torment that fueled his atrocities. We'll also look at his case's impact on criminal psychology and what we can learn from his horrifying journey. So, if you're ready to uncover the Brooklyn Vampire's dark secrets, let's begin. Albert Fish was born as Hamilton Howard Fish on May 19, 1870, in Washington, D.C. His early life was marked by instability and trauma. Albert's father was 75 years old at the time of his birth, and his mother struggled to care for her children alone after her husband's death. This lack of parental guidance and emotional support left young Albert vulnerable and neglected. As a child, Fish was sent to an orphanage, where he experienced severe physical abuse. This traumatic environment planted the seeds of his sadomasochistic tendencies. Fish later recalled that he enjoyed the pain inflicted on him, a disturbing indicator of his future proclivities. He began to associate pain with pleasure, a dangerous mix that would come to define his adult life. By the time he was an adolescent, Fish had started developing increasingly disturbing behaviors. He began experimenting with self-harm and found gratification in inflicting pain on himself. These early signs of psychological disturbance set the stage for his descent into criminal activity. As Fish grew older, his behavior escalated from self-harm to targeting others, marking the beginning of his life as a predator. Albert Fish's criminal career began with minor offenses, but it quickly escalated to horrific acts of violence and murder. He targeted vulnerable children, luring them away from their families with promises of food or money. His methods were gruesome and calculated, often involving torture and cannibalism. Fish's crimes followed a chilling pattern, with each act becoming more depraved than the last. Central to Fish's macabre actions were his religious delusions and auditory hallucinations. He claimed that he received messages from God, instructing him to commit his heinous acts. These delusions provided a twisted justification for his crimes, allowing him to see himself as an instrument of a higher power. Fish's hallucinations were vivid and persistent, further blurring the lines between reality and his disturbed mind. The most infamous of Albert Fish's crimes was the kidnapping and murder of 10-year-old Grace Budd. In 1928, Fish visited the Budd family to offer their son a job. Instead, he persuaded them to let Grace accompany him to a party. Grace was never seen alive again. Fish later sent a letter to her family, detailing the gruesome manner in which he had tortured and killed the young girl. The letter was a horrifying glimpse into the mind of a true monster. Fish's letters and confessions revealed the depth of his depravity. He took perverse pleasure in describing his crimes, showing no remorse for his actions. These writings were not only a means of taunting his victims' families, but also a window into his disturbed psyche. They provided crucial evidence for law enforcement, helping to build a case against him. Albert Fish's capture resulted from diligent police work and a bit of luck. The letter he sent to Grace Budd's family contained a clue that led investigators to his door. Fish was arrested in 1934, ending his reign of terror. The trial that followed was a media sensation, with gruesome details of his crimes shocking the public. During the trial, Fish's defense team argued that he was insane, pointing to his religious delusions and hallucinations as evidence. However, psychological evaluations revealed a complex and disturbed individual whose actions went beyond the scope of simple insanity. The jury ultimately found Fish guilty, and he was sentenced to death. On January 16, 1936, Albert Fish was executed, but the horror of his crimes left an indelible mark on history. Albert Fish's case has been studied extensively by psychologists and criminologists. Experts have debated the nature of his mental illness, with some diagnosing him with sadistic personality disorder, schizophrenia, and other severe psychotic disorders. His delusions and hallucinations were clear indicators of a troubled mind, but they alone did not explain the full extent of his cruelty. Fish's case has had a significant impact on the field of criminal psychology. It highlighted the need for better understanding and treatment of severe mental illnesses to prevent such individuals from committing crimes. The lessons learned from studying Fish's mind have been applied in modern forensic psychology, aiding in identifying and treating individuals with similar psychological profiles. Albert Fish remains one of the most chilling examples of how the darkest corners of the human mind can lead to unspeakable horror. Albert Fish's life was a harrowing journey from a neglected child to one of the most infamous criminals in history. His background of abuse and early psychological issues set the stage for his descent into madness. Fish's sadomasochistic tendencies, coupled with his religious delusions and auditory hallucinations, drove him to commit unspeakable acts of violence and cannibalism. His crimes, especially the notorious murder of Grace Budd, shocked the world and left a lasting impact on criminal psychology. Reflecting on the horror and complexity of Albert Fish's case, we are reminded of the profound depths of human depravity. His story is a chilling testament to the dangers of untreated mental illness and the capacity for evil within the human mind. As we explore these dark tales, we must remember the victims and the lessons learned from these tragedies. We invite you to share your thoughts on Albert Fish's case in the comments below. What do you think drove him to such extremes? How can we prevent similar horrors in the future? Let's continue the discussion and delve deeper into the minds of history's most notorious criminals. If you find this video intriguing, please like it, subscribe to the Phantasmal Eternity channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. In our next video, we'll explore another spine-chilling story from the annals of criminal history. Stay tuned for more psychological horror and true crime stories to keep you on your seat.